Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the 6 Grotmas coverage of all of the new detachments. And today it is the Thousand Sons, one of the strongest armies in the game for a very long period of time. They're a little bit on the down now. And will this new detachment help them out? We shall see. As ever, please do hit like and subscribe and leave us a comment. It'd be really good to know if you're enjoying the coverage and anything we can do to improve it as well. And if you want to sign up on YouTube to become a YouTube member, support us a little bit financially as we embark on our very long 40k content quest, then that'd be massively appreciated too. All right, let's dive into this. So we have the Hexwarp Thrallband today, which is, I think, leaning a little bit on mechanics we've seen elsewhere in Canoptek Court and Chaos Demons with this detachment rule, the flow of magic, which gives you certain areas of the battlefield under your control. They become your flow of magic. So your deployment zone always is. If you control at least half the objectives in No Man's Land, then No Man's Land is. And if you control the objectives in your opponent's deployment zone, then you can take theirs as well. And basically, each time a Thousand Sons model from your army makes a psychic attack, you can reroll a wound roll of 1. And if you're within your flow of magic, you instead get +1 to wound. Now, it's worth saying those things don't stack. So I think a whole bunch of things about this. Thousand Sons already have good access to reroll wound rolls of 1 and +1 to wound via Magnus and Arrowman. And they can get full rerolls to wound from rubrics on objectives as well. So it doesn't feel like a buff they necessarily were in need of. And I think the other thing with this is just that because of the raw power of the previous index and all the nerfs Thousand Sons have taken, they don't have a ton of units on the board, which actually makes their primary play a bit precarious. You'll often see Thousand Sons armies, standing off the points or just shoving like a Vortex Beast on them for a little while until they can do enough damage to then push out. So I guess my concern with these buffs is that you're not going to have your flow of magic all the time in No Man's Land, and actually you might end up losing too much by way of assets and Cabal points pushing out for it. But it's going to encourage some different list building, maybe things like Zang or your cheaper OC. The Vortex Beast, again, always useful, I think, for having stuff to shove out and switch this on if you want it for when you want that +1 to wound. But still a wider question about whether you just get these things enough without the detachment rule in the other one. Which might mean that, this is designed to push you and nudge you a little bit away from using Arrowman and Magnus and trying something else. So we'll have to see. Anyway, okay so far. Nothing inspiring. Moving on to the enhancements, we've got Arcane Might. This is 20 points. And this gives you +1 to the strength characteristic of psychic weapons by the bearer's unit. And while the bearer's unit is wholly within your flow of magic, you get +2 to the strength instead. So there's a few T-Sons characters that will benefit from the strength and wound boosts more than others. Those are ones that already have dev wounds. The Exalted Sorcerer springs to mind, but I think the Terminator Sorcerer is also quite nice for this. And so buffing that up, I think, is certainly nice, being able to push that strength up, which obviously is going to combo with +1 to wound sometimes to make it very easy to wound, particularly infantry, for a Thousand Sons model. Next up, we've got Empowered Manifestation. And this adds 6 inches to the range of abilities that the bearer has that specify a range, including your rituals, and you can also reroll your hazardous tests. So I guess the biggest obvious recipient of this would be the Demon Prince with the Stealth Aura, so making that a much larger Stealth Aura. I think that's really good for T-Sons. They're often very vulnerable to getting picked up and shooting, so having more stealth going on is definitely nice. Rerolling hazard test does you no harm either, I suppose. That's all right. So I think that one, I like the Thousand Sons Demon Prince. I run him quite a lot, so I think I'd definitely be contemplating Empowered Manifestation for him. Next up, we have Empiric Onslaught. So this gives you Thousand Sons model whilst in the flow of magic. They get +3 to the attack's characteristic of ranged psychic weapons equipped by the bearer. That's solid. I mean, it gives you quite a shooty character, and it's particularly fun in any unit that's got sustained. I'm thinking of the Thousand Sons Sorcerer here with his I think it's 2d6 sustained 3 gun, 2d6 +3, and adding some sustained into that. That's quite fun. But obviously, it just doesn't combo as effectively, I don't think, as some of the current co-op magic things. We've got to assume co-op magic's probably going away in its existing form before too long anyway. It's very hard not to view this detachment through that lens. But this certainly gives you another way of juicing up a character. All of these so far are very much letting you juice up your characters to do a little bit more damage, a bit more output. Finally, we have the Noctilith Mantle, Thousand Sons model only. The unit always counts as within your army's flow of magic. Now, there is one combo application that I will look at below that I think is certainly relevant here, but models in that unit not being able to be selected to use any rituals, that really hurts this for me. I think that's a real shame. It's just so strict, and obviously massively cuts down the power of the combinations you can pull off with this. So the enhancements are okay. You can juice up some characters. You can get a bit more output going on. I think the big one is probably, the expanded stealth aura on the Demon Prince. I definitely like that because there's a couple of other good durability buffs in here. So I think making a more durable Thousand Sons army is definitely one of the things I think you can do with this detachment. So let's shimmy down to the stratagems. So first off, we have Warding Hex, and this is good old sticky objectives. Now, you have to be in your flow of magic, and you have to have a psyche unit within range of an objective. But if you do that, you can then sticky it. Now, that has some application for just sticking your home field and then pushing on out. It's going to be hard in the early game, I think, to get off a sticky mid-board, but obviously if you do, it just lets you swing your assets away or pull back and force the opponent out. Doesn't do you any harm. I just think the setup's a little tougher than some of the other ones we've seen of this kind. But certainly being able to sticky your backfield and move on, especially when you've got double move late game, for example, that really helps. Next up, we've got Wrath of the Doomed. Fantastic stratagem name. So, in the fight phase, just after an enemy unit has selected its targets, you pick your unit and you get 4-up fight on death with +1 if your unit is wholly within the army's flow of magic. Now, there will be some times when this is useful. For me, the reality is just that Thousand Sons just don't have many good combat units. Magnus is the one that jumps out, and you're basically putting it on one dice roll as to whether you would fight with Magnus. Scarabs are okay at combat, but they are only okay. So I guess into very elite, fragile trading units, this has some application. But I think a lot of the time, I just don't see the value. You're not going to scratch real proper combat units with this. Or you're taking a coin flip on like a Demon Prince or Magnus. So I'm not a massive fan. That's merely okay. Next up, we have Strands of Time. So this is a movement phase stratagem just after your Thousand Sons Psycho unit falls back. This gives you either shoot or charge when you fall back, or if you're in your flow of magic, it gives you both. This is great. This is really, really good. Thousand Sons get locked up in combat all the time. Being able to fall back, shoot, or charge with Magnus, for example, incredibly effective. He's always in danger of getting gummed up. Being able to do this with a Brick of Scarabs, I think this is a fantastic tool, and it's very, very useful for T-Sons to have. It's definitely something that they've missed. So I think Strands of Time is a great win for them. Next up, we've got Through the Veil. This is quite a fun one. This lets you, for a CP, either deep strike in a Rubric Marines unit, or if it's a Scarab Occult Terminator unit, it can be set up within your flow of magic more than 6 away horizontally from all enemy models. So this is the combo I like with Noctilith Mantle, to have a Scarab unit dropping down from 6 away, even in your opponent's deployment zone or anything else. I think that will keep the opponent honest. What I hate about it is not being able to combo it with the threat of a Doom Bolt or something else. Because at the end of the day, Scarab Occult Terminators just have quite flaky output. So I'm a little concerned you're going to drop down and not do an awful lot. And that's my main concern with this at the moment. But yeah, powerful. I think being able to get rubrics on the parts of the board you need them is really, really nice. And mobility is an issue for Thousand Sons. So I definitely like this stratagem. I think it definitely has some application. Next up, we've got Scouring Warp Flame. So this is a good shooting sort of combined arms stratagem. Your Thousand Sons Psyche unit can tag something within your flow of magic. The unit has to be within your flow of magic, but it tags something, and that's then going to get you Ignores cover, both for that unit and for other ones shooting. So Thousand Sons have a lot of like AP1, AP2 psychic weapons and bolters. Being able to strip cover is a big deal for them. It's going to help them a lot. But I think, I think it's just a little bit of a setup thing with making sure you're in the flow of magic. As you can see, a lot of the time you're going to need to shove out and secure midboard primary to really leverage your damage with this. So it's going to require a little bit of a think about how you do that, and you're going to need disposable assets to actually implement that with. Next up, we have Kaleidoscopic Tempest. In your opponent's shooting phase, just after an enemy unit has selected its targets, 1000 Sons Psyche unit can get stealth and the benefit of cover if it's within your flow of magic. So this is obviously a defensive buff. I think it's because of the flow of magic requirement for the benefit of cover, it's a little bit swingy because you're going to have the Demon Prince's stealth aura sometimes if you want to take that enhancement. I know I definitely will. But being able to occasionally pop benefit of cover and stealth on something like Magnus is fantastic, obviously, if he's taking some shooting. It's a good defensive buff. I think T-Suns really benefit from being able to throw off enemy shooting a little bit, and you've obviously got two ways of having stealth out there in this detachment. It's fundamentally the same issue, which is that when it comes down to a proper mid-board scrap, defensive buffs that need your opponent not to afflict points, that's going to be a little bit tricky at times, because your opponent, by definition, should be trying to do that. So it's an interesting detachment, guys. I think we were talking about this on the show last night. Thousand Sons, by definition, have had a very weird time because they've had an incredibly powerful rule set that's been very distorted with nerfs and adjustments. They've got a lot less units on the board now, which I think means that any effort to rewrite their rules is going to struggle a bit, just because how do you cost something that could do all the crazy things you could do in the other detachment appropriately? You know, Dev Wounds is the big one here. There are some Thousand Sons units that have Dev Wounds innately, so you probably want to build into those. But obviously it's a big loss to have Dev Wounds just on tap for so many psychic weapons in the previous detachment. And I think it's going to be a case of there's probably a stodgier, more durable build in here. Terminators, bigger rubric bricks with Exalted Sorcerers, using stealth, using cover, and then potentially not even Magnus or Araman, because you can get their sorts of buffs in other places and you just spread the threats a bit more widely instead, and then lots of OC scoring trash to push out and get things. I'm not entirely sure on the direction. I think it's going to be really interesting to see. I don't think this is going to immediately draw Thousand Sons competitive players away from the existing rule set in quite the same way. But I think it's definitely got some interesting tricks and plays as far as, you know, the stealth stuff. I think is particularly good. I think the 6-inch deep strike on Scarabs is quite a fun reason to take maybe MSU Scarabs and be able to drop in and catch people out in that sense. So there's mission play in it, and there's definitely some options here. But I'm not necessarily thinking. Can't see the Thousand Sons going to be quite as wildly excited about this as perhaps some of the other armies will be with theirs so far. But I'm really excited. I'm going to give it a go. I'll play into Davies Tyranids for our next Grotmas Grudge match, and we will test this out. So if you've got any ideas, Thousand Sons fans, about what I might want to be running in this detachment, I'd be very interested to know. I'm feeling Demon Prince. I'm feeling some Scarabs. I'm feeling Exalted Sorcerer rubric blocks. Those feel like some things I'm definitely interested in trying. Do I still stick with Magnus or Araman? What else am I going to want? You let me know. And we will see you all again tomorrow for yet another Grotmas detachment. Thank you very much for watching. Please do hit like and subscribe. We massively appreciate it. Lowest of Men out. Bye-bye.